Hi everyone and welcome back. Today this video is about how the lung volumes and capacities are measured. Respiratory system is one of the vital systems of the body that takes up air from outside the environment and supply the air to all parts of the body. And similarly takes up the metabolic waste products from inside the cells of the body to the outside the environment. There are some conditions in which the normal functioning of the respiratory systems are affected, especially in some respiratory diseases that will affect the supply of oxygen to different parts of the body. Pulmonary function tests assess the normal functions of the respiratory system as well in pathological conditions and also to monitor the treatment of these respiratory diseases. As the respiratory system is involved in the inhalation and exhalation of the air, so in pulmonary function test, the air is measured by measurement of lung volumes and lung capacities. Here in this video, I will explain about the lung volumes. So what are lung volumes? Lung volumes is the measurement of the air that is inhaled, exhaled, and stored within the lungs with respect to the time. There are a number of different terms that describe the measurement of the space taken up by the air during respiration. So these lung volumes, the terms that measures the amount of the space taken up by the air in the respiratory system, these are tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. Let's see here one by one in detail along with their graphs, because their graphs are important for measuring their values. Here I am talking about the tidal volume. So tidal volume is the amount of air that enters the lung during normal inhalation at rest, or when the person is resting normally and breathing quietly, then the amount of air breath is in the tidal volume. So it means that the tidal volume is the measurement of the air when the person is at rest or when the person is breathing normally, that we usually do the normal breathing. So the tidal volume is the measurement of air just at normal inhalation and the normal exhalation, or you can say that at normal breathing. So if we see in the graph how the graph is drawn for the tidal volume, here you can see this tidal volume, the volume of air in lungs with respect to the time. So how they are drawn with the respect to the time, this is the normal inhalation, this is the normal exhalation, normal inhalation and normal exhalation. So this all comes in the tidal volume, that the measurements of the for the air taken up during normal breathing or when the person is at rest. If you see on this x-axis, the values are 2500 and 3000. So if we measure the tidal volume, the measurement of the tidal volume comes that the normal value is 500 ml. Other is the inspiratory reserve volume. So what is the inspiratory reserve volume? The amount of extra air inhaled during a deep breath, or the additional air person can breathe in before they simply cannot breathe in anymore. This extra amount of inhaled air is the inspiratory reserve volume. So the inspiratory reserve volume is the volume of air that is taken up after normal breathing. That if you see in the graph as shown here, as I already described, this is the normal breathing that the person can breathe during normal breathing, during normal inhalation, exhalation. So when the person forcefully exhales to the maximum, inhales to the maximum, that how much maximum air the person can take into their respiratory system. So the maximum inhalation or the maximum forceful inhalation by the person is the inspiratory reserve volume. So as shown in the graph, this is the normal inhalation, and when the person breathes in by the forceful inhalation, the extra amount of air inhaled. So this graph is for the extra amount of inhaled air. So this is the inspiratory reserve volume. So what is the measurement of the inspiratory reserve volume? As you can see there, this is 3000 and this is 6000. So the normal value of the inspiratory reserve volume is 3300 milliliters. What is the expiratory reserve volume? Expiratory reserve volume is the amount of extra air that is exhaled during a forceful breath out, or when the person tries and breathe out even more until physically cannot breathe out any more air. This is the expiratory reserve volume. So expiratory reserve volume, as it is the volume after the normal expiration. When the person expires the air normally and then forcefully expires or do exhalation to the maximum, this maximum exhalation of the air is known as the expiratory reserve volume. If we see in the graph, tidal volume, this is the normal inhalation and this is the normal exhalation. Normal inhalation and normal exhalation. And as we previously described, this is the maximum inspiration, and when the person exhales out the maximum to the maximum capacity, all the air to the outside environment, this is the maximum exhalation, or it is known as the expiratory reserve volume. If you see in the graph between these, this is the normal exhalation, and then when the person from the normal exhalation to the extra capacity and this maximum expiration that the person cannot breathe anymore, then this expiration is known as the expiratory reserve volume. So if we see to the measurements, this is 2500 and 1200, and we measure the expiratory reserve volume. The measurement of the expiratory reserve volume is 1000 milliliter. The other long volume is the residual volume. So what is residual volume? After maximum exhalation, the amount of air left in the lungs that the person physically cannot breathe out anymore. This remaining air prevents the lungs from collapsing. The air found always in the lungs is called the residual volume. So residual volume is the measurement of the air that is always present in the lungs. So after the exhalation, even after the maximum exhalation, there are some amount of air that is always present in the lungs. That lungs can never be emptied. If the lung is empty, it will cause the collapse of the lungs. So some amount of the air is always present in the lungs even after the maximum exhalation, and it never leaves the lungs emptied. So this minimum amount of air that is always found in the respiratory system that prevents the lungs from the collapse, that air is known as the residual volume. So if we see in the graph how much is the measurement of the residual volume, if we again see to the graph, this is the tidal volume, that is the amount of air breathed in and exhaled out during the normal breathing at rest. This is the maximum inhalation, this is the maximum exhalation, and then this is the residual volume. That is always the amount of air that is always present in the air that never leaves the lungs empty. So if we see to the measurement 0 to 1200, so the normal value of the residual volume is 1200 milliliter. So here this video was about the lung volumes, in which I explained the basic the measurements of the lung volumes. The tidal volume, which is the normal breathing during at rest, and I talked about the inspiratory reserve volume, that is the inhalation or to take up the air at the maximum, and the exhalation at the maximum, that is known as the expiratory reserve volume, that the maximum exhalation of the air that further you cannot exhale out any more air. And I talked about the residual volume, that the amount of air that is always present in the lungs to prevent it from the collapsing. So the next video will be about the lung capacities. Lung capacities are basically the combination of these volumes that makes up the capacities, that tells about this, also the measurement, important measurement that tells about that how much maximum air can be inhaled by the respiratory system after the exhalation. That will be described in the next video. Thank you for watching and keep watching. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe and share.